I had made a video in the past talking about how I like to style things in the winter. So this is a cream turtleneck from cotton that I'm wearing, and I love wearing this color underneath like my pinks and my purples, even my blues. Just gives an added level of sort of complexity to the outfit, takes the shirt up another notch, makes it feel more ready for winter. Because I do find in the winter sometimes I just want to wear a lot of dark colors, a lot of blacks. So I've been finding having these cream turtlenecks has really helped me to wear some of my lighter colors in the winter also. There was not one amongst us who looked forward to being born. We disliked the rigors of existence, the unfulfilled longings, the enshrined injustices of the world, the labyrinths of love, the ignorance of parents, the fact of dying, and the amazing indifference of the living in the midst of the simple beauties of the universe. We feared the heartlessness of human beings, all of whom are born blind, few of whom ever learn to see. I am so far reading The Famished Road by Ben Okri. The one thing I will say is the first few days of reading this, I was reading it before bed, and I had the most vivid nightmares, like literally horrifying nightmares. So I kind of put it aside for a few days because I was a little bit nervous. He knows a lot about like witchcraft to the point where I'm like, how does he know all of this? So anyway, I find it a little scary, but it is really good and really well written. I just wanted to film a little reading update. Oh, and I did spend a bit of time reorganizing my bookcase. It's still a work in progress, but I am definitely starting to like it more than I did before. So that's good. I just wanted to pop in really quickly as I just got a package. This is the first month that I've really started allowing myself to shop again. What I really wanted to get is a new work bag. So I picked up this bag from Sezane. It is called their tote bag. I've actually been wanting this bag for like 2 years. It was a little bit expensive and then it disappeared from their website. Now it has come back on their website in lots of different colors, but it's part of their archive, so it's final sale. So I wanted to show people what it looks like just in case they've been thinking of getting it and are nervous to take the plunge on a final sale bag. So let's get opening. It was such a pretty box, I feel bad that I had to just completely destroy it. It comes in this bag to store it in. It's so pretty. So this is the bag. So the front side here has a pocket. There is no pocket on the back side. The straps are a good length, I would say, because that's sometimes my issue with tote bags. The straps are not big enough to go around if you're wearing a puffer jacket, which I tend to wear in the winter. So this is a good strap length. It's very deep, which some people don't like, but I like to organize my bag with lots of little pouches and small bags. So I like something like this, which is really deep and I can just pack things in. I find for myself bags that are wide, like I bought the bag from Quince, which is their popular leather bag. Those bags, I feel like they make me look like a child. I really don't like them. What I love the most about this bag is that it's structured even without anything in it. So they have put something on the base, which allows it to keep its shape. So I could literally put this on the floor and it would still stand up, which is exactly the kind of bag that I like. It is leather on the inside. It's kind of like a suede, black, and there is one zipper pouch, which, you know, you can put some small things like your phone and your keys in there. So really excited to have my hands on that. That's all I wanted to film for today. Thanks. I will chat soon. So it is Sunday. I have had a nice, slow, relaxing weekend. I had a lot more content filmed, but as I was working through it, I really didn't like a lot of what was in it when I was editing. I am a very big perfectionist, so even if I'm like editing and I see my shirt is wrinkled or there's like a hair out of place, I just want to delete all of the footage and film it again, which is not great in terms of actually making sure content is posted, but it is what it is. So I really am feeling like for my channel, it's going to change, and I hope people are okay with that. I will still post content talking about books because books are such a big part of my life and they're always things that I'm reading and that I'm learning. But I find because my work involves a lot of reading and involves a lot of problem solving. I'm not always able to sit down and like have really detailed notes in order to summarize the books that I've been reading, which I think is what's really effective if you want to have a proper booktube channel. And secondly, I have really been growing on my spiritual journey. I have been focusing a lot on understanding more about God and understanding more about Christianity and other major religions and reading religious texts. Right now, I really have been focused on understanding the Bible. And I feel like that's taking up a lot of my time in terms of reading. And I don't think people necessarily are interested in hearing me talk about the Bible on and on and on every vlog. And then thirdly, the more I read these religious texts, the more I see this inherent wisdom in them that is really useful to meditate on. And the more I see that the books that I was spending a lot of time reading don't have the same sort of eternal truths. And I think if I'm really going to be setting aside time from my busy schedule to do a review or to talk about a book in a lot of detail, it needs to be a book that really has this sort of inherent truth that is worth setting aside that time, and also worth people sitting down and listening to a long form video talking about one particular book. So because of that, I don't really see myself doing book reviews in the way I've done before. I would say if people have questions about books, you can feel free to ask in the comments and I will respond, but I don't see myself doing really deep dives summarizing the books that I've been reading. But for the month of January, I did get through 4 books. I will sort of talk about them briefly from my favorite to least favorite. So my favorite read of January was definitely My Glorious Defeats by Barrett Brown. He was a member of Anonymous, and this is a memoir where he talks about his life, but it's more than just a memoir. It is a critique of the prison industrial complex, of surveillance, of our legal system, of the ways in which different states sort of conspire together against people that are considered to be enemies of the state. It's also very funny. So I really enjoyed that. It's probably going to be one of my favorite reads of the year, just because I've never come across anything like that. Like, it's like, imagine reading a work by Edward Snowden where he's talking about, all of the things that the government does, but then it's also quite funny and quite entertaining to read. So that's what that book was, and I think that's what made it so unique. I ended up giving it 5 stars, more because it doesn't have very good reviews or ratings on Goodreads. If Goodreads allowed a half star, I would give it 4.5 stars. I don't think it is the book that is like gonna change your life, but if you are interested in understanding more about the government and reasons to be critical of the government, particularly the US government, I think this is a really good one to read. My second favorite read of January was The Iliad, the graphic novel. I have read The Iliad before. I read it a few years ago, and I remember quite liking it, but it was very difficult to keep track of all of the characters. So I came across this series of books that are done in their graphic novels of sort of older classics. So I'd read the Aeneid, and then I decided to go back and read the Iliad, and it really just did a good job of showing you the faces along with what's happening in the story, which I found much easier to follow along and understand what exactly was happening and what was taking place. And this is all in preparation for Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, talking about the Trojan War and what happens. And then one of the characters in the Iliad, Odysseus, goes on this journey to return back home, and it takes him 10 years. And that's what the Odyssey is about. So you don't have to understand the Iliad in order to understand the Odyssey, but it definitely is helpful. My third favorite book was House of Huawei, and this looked at Huawei, the Chinese company, but it also is looking at the history of China. The beginning part is really slow and really boring, and I thought I was gonna not finish it multiple times because it was really hard to get through. Thankfully, I was listening to it as an audiobook, so I just kept plowing away even though it was really slow. But the beginning was sort of an introduction to the creator of Huawei, but really going into his background. It almost felt a bit like a biography, and then at the same time giving a background on China, looking at things like Mao and the different time periods in China that happened under Mao's rule, at the same time as this founder of Huawei, Ren, and his upbringing and how it coincided with Chinese history. And then it starts getting into Huawei as a company and its growth over time. It allows you to understand more of what the company does and how it's so varied in scope. They have phones, I believe now they have cars, but the main reason why the US government has issues with Huawei is because of the infrastructure that they put in place. So, for example, fiber optic cables, allowing countries to have infrastructure for different methods of communication, essentially. And you have loads of countries who the US will not partner with, who are now looking for alternatives. And so they were having to go to, let's say, China and Huawei rather than going to American companies. And then it also looks a lot about surveillance. So the way in which Huawei is helping China, along with other countries, to spy on their citizens. But then also the ways in which countries like America hacked into Huawei in order to get information about the Chinese government and about other countries who are using Huawei's infrastructure. So just a whole big web and mess. And then obviously Huawei was really big in the news because the founder, Ren, his daughter, was kept in Canadian custody and she was going to be extradited to America. So that was when Huawei really came onto my radar, and that was part of the reason I decided to pick up this book. I left this book feeling very much like Huawei may definitely have things to be critical about, but America is also not an innocent party. So it just left me feeling like there's much more to the story than America likes to portray. I would have ranked this higher if it was more interesting. It's just, I think you could get a lot of this information from articles. I wish there was like a documentary, because that would probably be what I would recommend. But it is not a bad book. It's just a little bit boring, and it's really, I think it was a little bit long considering it was just really talking about this one company, but it's because there was so much history that goes into it, which I was not really here for, but it added, I guess, to the book in its own way. And then my least favorite read of January was Revelations. I think it's Revelations with an S by Elaine Pagels. I had been reading the book of Revelation in the Bible and wanted more of an understanding of the reasons why it was written and different people's interpretation of the book of Revelation. He does a good job of explaining the political climate when the book of Revelation, or I like to call it the Revelation of John, was written, and the fact that the Roman Empire was in charge. And so a lot of the figures that are mentioned in the Revelation of John are supposed to be representing different people in the Roman government, and it's talking about the collapse of the Roman Empire. Then she talks about different interpretations of the Revelation of John throughout history, but mainly like ancient history. So how it was interpreted at the beginning, and then, you know, the 2nd century CE, etc., etc. One of the reasons I didn't really like this is she goes on all of these sort of rabbit holes, and she starts talking a lot about the Gnostic Gospels, which were books that were not included in the Christian canon, but were written around the same time. And so she starts talking about other books of Revelation by different people and how they differed or were similar to the Revelation of John. And I just didn't find that particularly helpful. Like, that's not really why I came here. And I think the biggest reason why I didn't like this book is it wasn't good at actually explaining what the Revelation of John really was about outside of this like Roman Empire sphere. I felt like there was much more to the book in the Bible that wasn't really talked about by the author. I don't know her religious beliefs, but it didn't feel like that's why she was writing it. And then I also came to realize she's written another book about the Gnostic Gospels, and it kind of just felt like she wanted to tie in that information into this book. Sometimes I sit with books longer and then I realize that there actually was more use to it than I thought. For example, I went back and compared what she was talking about when it comes to the Revelation of John to what was talked about in the History of the Bible by John Barton, which I read last year. And I realized he actually didn't really talk about the book of Revelation very much in there. So she definitely was filling a gap that exists. I just don't know if it really was the perfect book for me. I have decided now that I'm not going to do TBR videos, at least for the time being. I had actually filmed one and I've already not been reading the books that I listed, so I think it's just better for me to come and chat about the books as I read them. If you're new to this channel, it's all about re-education and decolonizing the mind. I created this channel as a way to share what I am reading and learning with the world. If you're interested in following along with me, feel free to subscribe.